It's time to embrace our inner furry and talk about the untamed beasts. Welcome to All Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. It's me. It's Toast. How are you all doing today? Before I even start, I can hear the shouts and cries of the comment section asking, Toast, why are you looking at Untamed Beasts? You've already done Untamed Beasts, and it's a first edition bespoke. Surely they're bad. Surely you can't buy them anymore. And surely Warcry's dead. Why are you wasting your time? And the answer to that question is fairly simple. I kind of like Untamed Beasts, and I want to talk to them now they've received some changes thanks to the addition of Briar and Bone and battle traits. But before I get into all of that, it is time for a little bit of shilling.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing, as that helps me fight against that dastardly YouTube algorithmic demon. And if you want to help in a more tangible way, then please consider signing up to my Patreon or my YouTube members, or using my Element Games affiliate link down below when buying some new Warcry gubbins. A huge shout out to my patrons and members who you can find on screen now. Badouche. But with all of that out of the way, it's time to get on with the show.
And now for something completely different.
So, Untamed Beasts, we start with a battle trait as we always do. This is the newest addition to Untamed Beasts, and it's quite interesting. I like this quite a bit, even though it is a little bit risky. It's called Worthy Prey. At the start of each battle round, if no enemy fighters are your worthy prey, pick an enemy fighter. That fighter is now your worthy prey. While that fighter is your worthy prey, abilities that target that fighter are treated as having a value of 6. There's two camps of worthy prey opinions, and one is that worthy prey is kind of good, and the other is that worthy prey is just other battle traits but done worse. And honestly, it falls in between those two stances quite comfortably. Worthy Prey is quite powerful. It does have some very good use cases within Untamed Beasts, but there are also better battle traits within Chaos and very similar battle traits that are easier to pull off and just work naturally all the time. So there is that. Ultimately though, Worthy Prey is a pinpoint targeting mechanism where you pick a guy and then you go out of your way to murder it, because multiple abilities within Untamed Beasts benefit from that constant 6. So pick a thing you want to kill, then go and kill it. This doesn't have to be the strongest thing on the board. This could just be chaff or a target opportunity. You want to get Worthy Prey off as many times as you can every single game. So just targeting their biggest, most durable, their strongest thing can remove the opportunity to use Worthy Prey on multiple smaller targets and by extension gain more value that way. Like with most things, it really does boil down to a case-by-case, game-by-game basis as to what you want to target, because sometimes targeting the big thing is the right answer, but you as a player have to get used to Untamed Beasts and how they work to make the right call game to game to game. When all is said and done, I actually like Worthy Prey quite a lot, so much so that I do run all-in faction Untamed Beasts just to use Worthy Prey, and by extension surrender all of my allies in the process. With the battle trait out of the way, let's look at their reaction, which is called Brute Resilience. A fighter can make this reaction when they are targeted by a melee attack action, but before the hit rolls are made. Subtract 1 from the damage points allocated to this fighter by each hit from that attack action to a minimum of 1. Right off the bat, we have two things to address. One, this does not affect critical hits. So if they get a crit, you don't reduce that damage, because hits and crits in Warcry are actually very different things. As far as I'm aware, only one reaction like this actually specifies crits, and that's the Jade Obelisk. They have the best version of this. Most versions of this reaction are Brute Resilience, and it's like. Secondly, it's still quite good. Reducing damage by 1 can be incredibly substantial, especially if your opponent has a lot of mid-range or middling damaged threats. Sure, Brute Resilience might save you from Vexmore by taking this damage from 5 to 4, but it's much more effectively used by reducing damage 2 attacks to damage 1. You are literally halving the damage you take, and that is substantial. That can keep your guys on the board for longer, and your guys aren't the toughest, so Brute Resilience can really help just push them over the edge, especially when fighting chaffy warbands or mid-range warbands. Once you start hitting those elite warbands with like 3 or 4 damage, Brute Resilience doesn't make that much of a difference, although it's better than nothing. It does shine though against that mid-range and that chaff element. Going onto their generic Untamed Beast abilities, these are the abilities that everybody can use, and they have 2, and we're going to start with their double called Savage Fury. Add 1 to the move characteristic of this fighter for the next move action they make in this activation. and add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the next attack action made by this fighter at this activation. Simply put, it combines Rush and Onslaught so you guys can get across the board faster and still get to attack with that bonus attack action. Naturally, because Savage Fury is functionally half of Onslaught and half of Rush, you would never use it all the time as your go-to. Instead, you would use this as sort of like a pseudo charge where you'd use it to get into combat and still gain benefits. But once you were in combat, you would use Onslaught. And on a similar level, if you just wanted to move across the board, you wouldn't use Savage Fury, you would just use Rush. In the end, this ability is a wonderful little utility pick. It's cheap to use and it seamlessly increases your damage output and your ability in one slick package. I like it a lot. Finally, we have their quad, which is Unleash the Beast. Until the end of the battle round, add half the value of this ability, rounding up to the attacks and strength characteristics of melee attack actions made by this fighter. So Unleash the Beast is actually really cool. It does compete with Rampage, and in some cases Rampage will likely be a little bit better, but there's also those occasions where you're already in combat, you don't need that movement of Rampage, and you just want to increase your attack output and your strength and just delete someone from the board. Taking your Heart Eater, Badou, from attack 5, strength 5 to attack 8, strength 8 for both attack actions for 16 attacks, strength 8, 2-5 damage. That's pretty impressive. You can punch through everything in the game. Even the toughest things in the game are wounded on a 3+ when you are strength 8. So overall, just a really fun quad. So that's their abilities taken care of. Let's look at their profiles, their fighters, and we're going to start with their hero called the Heart Eater. He was just on screen. Badou, he's now back on screen. This guy is wonderful. He's one of my favorite leaders because he's just good. He's good all around. For 200 points, you get movement 5, which is nice and quick. He's toughness 4 and 20 wounds, which is entirely average for a bespoke warband leader. His attack profile is 5-5-2-5, which again is really solid. Strength 5 is a key strength to be at. You can now swing over most chaff. 5 attacks is a wonderful number of attacks, and 2-5 damage means you're going to spike from time to time, and he's just really good at blending through things. How I like to run my Heart Eater is to give him +1 damage for 25 points. This brings him to a 5-5-3-5 profile, which is disgustingly reliable. He just gets into combat and starts blending through things like nobody's business. Man, it just does work. And of course, he has his own ability that feeds into this uber blender profile that he already has, and it's called All Out Attack, and it is fairly generic, granted, but it's good. A fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them this activation. This fighter makes a bonus move action or a bonus attack action. Again, it is super basic. We see this all the time, but when you have a guy with a 5-5-3-5 profile, he's going to do work. If you throw this guy into a group of 3, he will likely kill all 3. And if you kill one guy and aren't in range to kill the second, you can just now move for free to kill that second guy. And with movement 5, that bonus move action is rather substantial. Of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention that this is a fairly gamble-heavy ability because you don't get used Onslaught, you don't get used Savage Fury, so if you put all your eggs into one basket to try and get the bonus actions out and it fails, then you've wasted the opportunity to potentially kill just one guy more reliably for that greed. So always bear that in mind. Moving on to their next guy, we have the First Fang, Badou. This guy is the first guy that really benefits from our battle trait, Worthy Prey. But before that, we go on to his stats. He's got a movement 4, toughness 4, and 15 wounds, with a 3-5-2-4 profile at 1 inch range, and a 2-5-2-5 profile at 8 inches. This guy's 130 points and is fairly solid. Again, that strength 5 makes a big difference here because it lets him punch over the average toughness in Warcry, and having a range attack with no minimum range means he can also do things like poke through Quest or Soulsworn reactions and other sneaky things like that. He is a little bit expensive at 130 points, but 15 wounds is quite nice and toughness 4 is durable enough. Where he shines is with his ability, which is called the Harpoon Snag. It is a triple and it reads, this fighter makes a bonus attack action. After that attack action, the target of that attack action makes a bonus move action directly towards this fighter as if they were jumping a number of inches equal to the value of this ability. And when doing so, they ignore engagement range and all that good stuff. So Harpoon Snag's really good. It's expensive at a triple because most pulls are actually doubles, but this is a triple with extra benefits. Firstly, this only really affects your range attack, which is 8 inches, which is quite substantial. And secondly, it's a bonus attack action, so you get to attack 3 times before you even look at the actual effect of the ability, which is that pull, which is always good. Pulls are always powerful. It allows you to move your opponent's models, get them into a bad situation, pull them off objectives, all kinds of really fun things. But where Harpoon Snag shines is with worthy prey, because if you use Harpoon Snag on a worthy prey, then you pull them 6 inches no matter the value of that ability, which makes it more likely you will get them where you want them to be, and then you gang up and you just beat them to death. A key thing to note is that Harpoon Snag doesn't actually have to hit at all with its attack action. You could miss all of your dice and still get the pull effect, which is something often forgotten by new Untamed Beast players, so don't forget that. And one final thing before I forget, Harpoon Snag does work in melee. I did write it off before because you don't get the pull effect necessarily from the melee attack. However, you still get the bonus attack action in melee if you want it. So the first Fang can be in melee, pop this to increase his damage put if you need to, which is kind of cool too. So overall, the first Fang's pretty darn good. He's not too expensive, he's fairly durable, he's got a nice attack stats, and his ability is fantastic. He's almost an auto-include because he's just that solid. Next up we have the Beast Speaker, who is 110 points, movement 5, toughness 4, 15 wounds with a 3-4-1-4 profile at 1 inch and a 4-4-1-3 profile at 3 inches. The Beast Speaker is just a good egg. She's nice and cheap, she's nice and fast, she's durable. Her attack profile is a little bit bad, but 3 inches ain't too bad, especially at 4 attacks at strength 4. She can just stand back and just chip away at chaff fairly reliably. Her strength, of course, comes from her ability, which is called Beastmaster, and that is a double. You pick a visible friendly fighter with the Beast rune mark within 4 inches of this fighter. That fighter makes a bonus attack action. It's super simple. She likes beasts, just whip a beast and then they do what you want them to do. It's kind of cool. A key thing to note is that it's not just tied to Untamed Beasts, it's all beasts. So if you ally in things like Chaos Spawn, or Ephelim's Pandemonium, or the Gnarl Spirit Pack, or even Malgore's Riptooth, you will gain the benefits of Beastmaster when you start whipping them, which is kind of cool. Naturally, if you don't take any beasts in your Untamed Beasts, then the Beast Speaker is completely worthless. But if you aren't taking beasts in Untamed Beasts, then you're kind of missing the point there, I think. And again, at 110 points, she's wonderfully priced for what she brings to the table, and I'm a huge fan of her. Sadly, I am less of a fan of the Prey Takers. We have 2 Badoush, and both really suffer from being really easy to kill. For 100 points, only having 10 wounds, okay, the movement 5, toughness 4, only having 10 wounds really holds these guys back. They are a little bit too squishy. They can get one-shot by so many things. It's really unfortunate. At 100 points, you kind of want things at 12 wounds and above, so being 10 is a bit naff, especially when they're almost twice the cost of just taking some chaff, and they aren't that much harder to kill. Now, offensively, they're both okay. 4-4-2-4 is absolutely fine, and 3-5-2-5 is also quite nice. The issue is that it's not quite good enough to offset the fact that they are incredibly squishy, and you can get better damage elsewhere. I am just not a fan. I've tried to run them before, and they are okay, but they lack that wow factor. They don't have the durability, they don't have the damage, and they don't have a unique ability, so there's nothing to really push them into being worth taking, and especially in a meta where things are super killy now. It's very, very common that a 10 wound chaff model just dies in one hit. So they were always kind of naff, and they've been aged out of the game as the game has gotten more killy. As cool as the models are, they're just not good enough, sadly. But moving on to their penultimate unit, we have the Plains Runner, Badoush. This guy is great because he is one of the cheapest models in Warcry now. A whole bunch of chaff got more expensive earlier in the year, and the Plains Runner, by extension, looks better because he didn't move at all. 50 points is the cheapest thing in Warcry, and the Plains Runner is only 55. So he is super close to being the cheapest thing you can possibly take in any warband anywhere. And for his price, you get a movement 5, toughness 3, 8 wound model with a 3-3-1-3 profile, and no unique abilities. He is chaff, he is basic, but he's great because for 55 points you can take a fair amount. He really lets the Untamed Beasts go all out and splash on some more expensive toys, because you can always make up for that massive cost by just adding in more Plains Runners who are cheap enough to take on mass, and at movement 5 they are innately annoying to deal with because they get around the board faster than most things. So there's not much to really say about them other than they're good. You will take a fair few of these, and they are just a highlight of Untamed Beasts because of their low cost. It's kind of cool. Their final unit is the Rock Tusk Prowler Badou, and this guy is 195 points for movement 8, toughness 4, 20 wounds with a 4425 profile and the Beast rune mark. The Rock Tusk Prowler is fine, but he has been a little bit power crept with the advancement of the game. You can get this kind of offensive and defensive and movement profile on models that aren't beasts for like 170 points. So the Prowler doesn't really compare well when you start looking out of faction, but we aren't looking out of faction. Within faction, the Rock Tusk Prowler is fine because he has synergy with that Beastmaster, getting that 4425 profile off again and again and again. Because of that Beast Speaker is really cool. It's not uncommon to have the Rock Tusk Prowler attack 4 times in a single turn by being in combat, attacking, and then getting your Beast Speaker to activate, use his ability, then wait, and then activate again to use it again to get the Prowler to attack 2 more times. Now, the biggest downside of the Prowler is definitely that strength 4. So if I was to take the Prowler, I would likely increase that strength to strength 5. If I was feeling a little bit saucy, I would consider giving him damage 3. But the downside there is that at strength 4, he might struggle to punch through chaff because chaff tend to be toughness 4 nowadays. So he might struggle in that regard. But we aren't done because the Prowler does have his own triple called Pounce. Until the end of this fighter's activation, the next time this fighter finishes a move action within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter. Allocate a number of damage points to that fighter equal to the value of this ability. Pounce is great. It is, again, it's fairly generic. There's nothing special about it because we see this in all kinds of older warbands and even modern warbands. However, Pounce is probably the best version of this now because of Worthy Prey, because you always do 6 damage if you are targeting a worthy prey, which is really nice. It gives the Prowler a degree of reliability, and with movement 8, he can just get around the board, slam into something, do a flat 6, and attack 4 times, and potentially kill a chaff model in one go. And if he's supported by a Beast Speaker, he might even get another kill off on top of that. So overall, I do like the Prowler, and I'm not against taking 2. The issue is that there are other beasts within Chaos that the Untamed Beasts can take that do kind of overshadow the Prowler, which is a shame. But if you take those allies, you lose out on your battle trait, and that's up to you if you think that's worth it or not. If the Prowler was 20 points cheaper, I would be all over this thing, but at 195 points, he's just a little bit too expensive for what he brings to the table, I think. So that's the Untamed Beasts, and overall, they are pretty darn cool. I like their leader, I like the First Fang, I like the Beast Speaker, I like the Planesrunners, and honestly, I do like the Prowler too. The big miss here is just those Prey Takers, and you can just replace those with Planesrunners or another Rock Tusk Prowler if you really wanted to. So right out the gate, they're kind of solid. Their biggest downsides is that they are a fairly killy warband, or they're trying to be, and they struggle with that because as good as their 5525 leader is, as good as the First Fang's pull is, and as cool as that Prowler is with his little jumpy attack, these guys can't go toe-to-toe with killier warbands, and other mid-range warbands will also give them a little bit of trouble, and this is what really holds them back. They're a little bit too squishy, and their damage really doesn't make up for that in the current game. They feel like they should be a glass cannon, but their cannon isn't quite strong enough to offset their vulnerability on the defensive side. Before I go, I do want to touch on some allies, and there are a fair few that are pretty darn good. And first things first, we have the Chaos Spawn, Badou. This guy is 170 points for movement 5, toughness 4, and 30 wounds with a 4425 profile. Right off the bat, this guy is a slow Prowler with plus 10 wounds, basically, and cheaper by 25 points. Basically, the Chaos Spawn is the natural replacement of the Prowler. He is substantially cheaper, he's much harder to kill, and he's just as good in combat. If I was to take a Spawn, I likely wouldn't just take 1, I would take 2, and I would give them both plus 1 strength and just go around blending things with my 30 wound beat sticks. Other allies I would consider would be the Null Spirit Pack. These are a blade bone that got some help with the last effort, keep having some points reductions, but douche. This is a Blade-born warband with the unique ability to turn themselves into beasts, which means they can all be affected by your Beast Speaker, which gives some wonderful synergies. And there's 2 that I really like, and it's Sakaar Blackwing and Gaul Spinehammer. You have to take Sakaar Blackwing if you want to take Gaul because of the Blade-born rules, and Sakaar is quite expensive for a fairly middling wizard, honestly. The strength, though, is with Gaul Spinehammer. That 3525 profile with movement 4, toughness 4, and 18 wounds for 120 points is kind of wonderful. Give him +1 damage and he is good to go. With his double to turn into a beast, he also gains +1 move and +1 attack. So this guy becomes a 4-5-3-5, and then with your beast speaker, he gets to attack again and again and again, making him one of the most damaging beasts you can take for Untamed Beasts. It's just a shame it will cost you over 300 points just to take him, and I'm not entirely sure that's worth it. And then finally, you can completely ignore the beast element of Untamed Beasts and take your standard Chaos allies. Of course, we're talking Vexmore and Varangard, and the Untamed Beasts are quite good at taking both because they have cheap chaff, so they can take that hit. And a big and here, Vexmore himself is very slow. You can use your harpoon to pull things into him, making Vexmore way more effective than he would be otherwise, even though Vexmore is painfully boring. But with allies and thralls out the way, here's a quick list to get you started. Badouche. But that's Untamed Beasts. Sadly, they're not the best warband going. They have some pretty glaring flaws, but they are fun to use, and thanks to their good leader, their chaff, their beast synergies, and their utility, they can definitely hold their own. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Untamed Beasts, and until next time, lads, ladies, and everybody in between and beyond, ta-ra.
Groovy.
Boy howdy, it's Toast, and it's time for the post-Toast credits. A huge shout out to my algorithmic demon slayers, Andy Morris, Armour Enthusiast 7, CT6497, Head Knight of Paint, Heinz D, Keep Plang, Long Run Hobbies, Lord Phylax, Sable Saber, Mrs. Toast, Steve Bean, The Houston Toad, Tough Tootin' Baby, and Velas. As always, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I'll see you all next time.